President Trump swearing in Admiral Karl Schultz as the new head of the U.S. Coast Guard. He has big shoes to fill. The smallest military branch has a giant mission. To give you a sense, during last year's back-to-back hurricanes, search and rescue efforts by the service saved more than 11,000 lives. The Coast Guard also plays a crucial frontline role in national defense, from illegal immigration to stopping human smugglers, to fighting to keep drug runners from bringing in billions of dollars worth of opioids to the United States, all with fewer than 40,000 active service duty members in their ranks. Joining me now exclusively for his first interview as Commandant Admiral Karl Schultz. Admiral, congratulations, and thank you very much for being here tonight.
Well, good evening, Martha, and thanks for the privilege of being here tonight.
You know, I think a lot of people, they look at that list, and I think for many people, they're not as familiar with what the Coast Guard does and how important it is to protecting our borders. And we watch the debate over what's going on at the southern border right now. What do you want people to understand about the work that you do there and what you think we need to do in order to make it safer?
Well, I think, as you mentioned in the intro, Martha, the Coast Guard is the smallest of the 5 armed services. We're uniquely positioned in the Department of Homeland Security. And our efforts of the men and women of the Coast Guard are absolutely critical to the homeland security of the nation and the national security. You mentioned border security. You know, on the maritime front, we tend to push and try to push our borders as far away from the U.S. coastline as possible against transnational criminals. Last year, we, with partner agencies and international partners, were able to stem 223 metric tons of cocaine. That's about 491,000 pounds of cocaine. Kept that from American shores. That's the same illicit narcotics that fuel a lot of the migration that comes out of the tri-border area or the northern interior. That's Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and those are the folks that leave those, you know, challenging places to show up at our southwest border.
You guys do amazing work, and you are very busy. In terms of the north part of the globe, and to the south too, the ice cutters that you need to function. Tell me a little bit about what you need that perhaps you don't have. And we're going to look at some of the action of these ice cutters on the screen. And how do we measure up with what other countries have for this capability?
Absolutely, Martha. So the Coast Guard is very relevant in what we call the high latitudes or the polar regions. Up in the Arctic, we're operating the sole United States icebreaker, heavy icebreaker, the Polar Star. That ship was built in the 70s. It's more than 40 years old. With the support of the administration and the Congress, we are on our way to build a heavy icebreaker replacement to serve our national interests. That's projecting our sovereignty there. We also operate in the Antarctic, where we go into the McMurdo Station and allow critical supplies to get in there to tend to the nation's interests in that part of the world as well.
You know, I mean, obviously the hurricanes were devastating, and your response to them, the Coast Guard response, really turned around in some ways a funding issue that could have been tough for the Coast Guard, because the president initially, when he came in, wanted to cut $1.3 billion from the budget in order to fund the U.S.-Mexico border wall. But then he was so taken with the work that you all did in the hurricane that he said this and put back the money. Watch.
In last year's historic hurricane season, our Coast Guard, heroes they are, saved almost 12,000 American lives in that short period. It's an unbelievable number when you think of it. It's an unbelievable number.
So in terms of funding, do you feel like you have what you need? I guess you never have enough, right?
Well, Martha, I think you mentioned that, you know, the Coast Guard is the nation's maritime first responder, and we did, as the president noted, we responded and assisted more than 11,000, almost 12,000 people. And, you know, to the first responder, it's really not about the number, it's about who that next person you're about to save is. But yeah, we have an organization that has capital assets. We're 42,000 active duty strong. There are bills to pay, and my concern coming in is to ensure the readiness of the Coast Guard. I talk about the Coast Guard through a lens about being a ready, relevant, and responsive organization, and that's what best gets after the needs of the nation. We're tied, our economic prosperity, our global influence are tied to our maritime, and the Coast Guard's very much part of that conversation.
Obviously, you're concerned about the enemies that the United States faces. Earlier today, the president held sort of an impromptu news conference, and here's what he said about Kim Jong-un.
You know, we've heard a lot of bad things about little Rocket Man, and suddenly you guys seem to be best friends.
We got along very well. We had a good chemistry. I don't know if that's supposed to be popular or politically correct to say, but we really did. We had good chemistry.
Does that concern you at all, that the things that the president is saying about Kim Jong-un that are somewhat positive given his history?
Well, Martha, the Coast Guard plays a niche role supporting the Department of Defense. On a daily basis across the 7 continents, we're supporting the 6 geographic combatant commanders, and in that position, I would defer to the Pentagon in terms of what the President's speaking with North Korea. But we're very much part of the plans for any type of contingency or war scenario. And again, we, on a daily basis, support those geographic combatant commanders under the Department of Defense.
Understood. Sir, thank you very much, Admiral. Good to have you with us, and congratulations in the new job. We'll be watching. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Martha.
You bet.